Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hang on. Dylan Mulvaney is one of Forbes magazine's Women of the Year. We'll give you all the details of that. Plus, there's a trend now. There's a bunch of young people on libs of TikTok who are reading the Quran and converting to Islam. What's that all about? And is it really just contrived from the Chinese government? Yes. And you won't believe what some people said at an Oakland City Council meeting supporting terrorists and denying the terror attacks of October 7th. Well, of course you'll believe it. It's Oakland, California, after all. Hey, it's Larry O'Connor. The show's called Larry, and it's brought to you today by the Electronic Payments Coalition. Let's get started. Listen, we're almost at December 1st right now, and we've got some holiday shows coming up. So guess what? We want your participation. See that down there? See that? That's my email address. I want to do a show where I'm just responding to your questions, your comments, your jokes, your one-liners. Go ahead and email me. I'll read it, seriously. And if it's not too profane, we'll put it on the show. And we'll do some special holiday shows, not just responding to that email, but also you can comment wherever you're watching this, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, X, or wherever you're catching us. Go ahead and put a comment in there if you want my attention and you want it to be a part of the show. Just put my name in all capital letters so it'll be easy to find, all right? Thanks. I appreciate it. You know, Forbes magazine used to be a really stalwart brand in the industry, in the magazine world, and in the free market capitalist business world, right? You get Inc. magazine, you get your Wall Street Journal, you get your Forbes magazine. Forbes magazine stood for something. Now, I say that in the past tense because everything changed with this. That's right. The Forbes Under 30 list is out, and they've decided to honor Dylan Mulvaney, social media creator Dylan Mulvaney, as one of the top promising, successful business women in the world. Now, I got to say, Dylan Mulvaney has really done quite a makeover here. Dylan Mulvaney hasn't always been blonde, has she? I don't think so. She's looking kind of Swedish there. Isn't that cultural appropriation? Well, I don't want to get anybody into trouble, but there's Dylan Mulvaney. And they even did a really exciting, glamorous video shoot with her.
You were, in the spotlight earlier this year after there was some backlash with the sponsored posts.
Yes.
Has this experience affected who you partner with going forward?
I'm sorry. Understate things much, little journalist gal there. A little bit of backlash over some controversy with, I'm sorry, how did she put it here? I just love this language.
Spotlight earlier this year after there was some backlash with the sponsored posts.
Backlash with a sponsored post. Let me translate that into English. You destroyed one of the strongest brands in the world, Bud Light, with one TikTok video. They lost their footing as the #1 beer brand in America, and now they're struggling to regain any level of credibility. A little bit of pushback from that social media post. Okay, let's see what Dylan has to say about that.
Has this experience affected who you partner with going forward?
Absolutely. I now realize that when I work with a brand, that they will forever be a part of my story. And so I want to make sure we're on the same page going forward. And I want there to be a mutual respect, and not only for me, but for my community.
Speaking of that, one stat that I love to bring up all the time is that the LGBTQ plus community has nearly $4 trillion in global purchasing power.
We've got the purchasing power.
Exactly. Yet brands are still shying away from LGBTQ plus representation. What would you say to brands that are, despite this fact?
I would say, well, that's a disappointment because we're here and we're not going anywhere. And I also think that there are brands that are interested in working with someone like me, but maybe don't know how to, or nervous to get involved or ask the wrong thing. And I say, let's figure it out together. Let's have these hard conversations, because if we don't, then something beautiful can't come from it.
Wow. Something beautiful can't come from it is a great way to put it there, Dylan Mulvaney. I don't know why businesses would be hesitant or scared to partner up. Let's face it, as I just noted, Bud Light is destroyed because of this partnership. And I love how Dylan Mulvaney is acting like it's Bud Light's fault. I mean, it is Bud Light's fault, let's face it. But if only Bud Light had just stuck with Dylan Mulvaney and doubled down, they would have been successful. It would have been great. It would have been perfect. But no, they got scared and they insulted the LGBTQ community. And that's why business didn't go very well. Listen, I've known a lot of people in the gay community in my life. They're not big Bud Light drinkers. I'll be honest with you. I don't think they're I don't think they've pulled their purchasing power away from Bud Light. And that's been the real backlash, honestly. But listen, I'm not one of Forbes magazine's Women of the Year. So what the hell do I know?
I think I would like my legacy to be this sort of idea of like celebrity 2.0. Like, how can we live in the spotlight and, have a large following, but try to do it in a way that feels like the kindest, most grounded, fun, silly, empathetic, vulnerable way possible. And I don't know if that can exist yet. I'm still figuring that out. And I think, there's certain circumstances where I might get pushback on that, but I want to see if we can do it differently.
I don't want to spend all this time beating up on Dylan Mulvaney. In fact, I got to be honest, I'm starting to admire the grift here. Think about what do you want your legacy to be? They're asking this failed chorus boy who did the national tour of Book of Mormon and then couldn't land a Broadway show during COVID-19, so decided to do this daily chronicle of becoming a girl on TikTok. Not a woman, mind you, a girl. And he's been able to turn it into this she has been able to turn this into a multi-gajillion dollar industry. You got to stand back in awe and be impressed in a way. I'm not annoyed by Dylan Mulvaney nearly as much as I'm annoyed at the Bud Lights of the world, or for that matter, Forbes, by encouraging this and celebrating it. Imagine being a mom or a dad who worked hard your whole life to raise your daughter and letting your daughter know you can be anything in this world. You just get the good grades, you work hard, you live life right, and you focus on substantial, important things, not this social media BS. Don't because honestly, what does Dylan Mulvaney do? What does Dylan Mulvaney actually do? Right? Dylan Mulvaney's achievement is getting a lot of followers on social media. But there's a mom and dad out there who are telling their daughters, you've got to have more substance in your life. You have to get an education. You have to learn things. You have to build a strong foundation of values and principles. And then you'll get a good college education if you get good grades. You can get into the right college and get an undergrad in economics or finance. And then maybe go to a graduate school at a great business school like Wharton School of Business. And then you'll get out and you'll get a great job at a Fortune 100 corporation, and you'll be a success in the business world. Maybe you'll be such a success that at some point they'll put you on the cover of Forbes magazine. And that little girl who did all of those things isn't being celebrated by Forbes. No, the successful little girl is Dylan Mulvaney. To be a real success in the business world, Forbes is telling us, probably best to be born a boy biologically and then, follow through with something else. The other problem with this is that when you celebrate Dylan Mulvaney in this way, honor Dylan Mulvaney, promote Dylan Mulvaney. Again, this is Forbes promoting the person who single-handedly ruined the most profitable, successful beer brand in America. And this is being elevated by Forbes as a success. Well, when you celebrate Dylan Mulvaney, you breed copycats. There are other people who will say, I can be Dylan Mulvaney too. And that, of course, leads to this.
Don't you hate it when your balls are sticking out of your panties just a little bit? And it doesn't hurt that bad right now, but if you just keep going the way it is, it's going to start chafing and just hurting worse. Why did God do this to women?
Why indeed? did God do that to women? This episode is brought to you by our friends at Electronic Payments Coalition. They want you to learn about the big box bait and switch. Go to stopthebigboxbaitandswitch.com. It's a bait and switch because the big box stores are behind it. Walmart, Target, all these big guys, they're trying to push through legislation that's going to give them a huge cash boondoggle under the guise of protecting your credit card processing payments, but that's not what it's going to do. What it's going to do is give them a lot of money so they can raise prices instead of giving discounts back to consumers at a time when we could kind of use it right now. See, everyone wonders where inflation comes from. Well, a big part of where inflation comes from is the government meddling in things like this, as if things don't cost enough right now. And it's going to squeeze the little mom and pop entrepreneurs who can't afford to do all the things that this new legislation and mandate is going to bring from Washington, D.C. And if you like all those miles and special rewards and bonuses you get from your favorite credit card right now, well, kiss it goodbye, because they're all going down the toilet thanks to this bill. Keep Washington out of this issue. Go to stopthebigboxbaitandswitch.com, learn more about the bill, and then use the form on that website to contact your congressman and senator to tell them to, say it with me, stop the big box baitandswitch.com. Let's stick with another TikTok phenomenon. This is a weird one. We've got a montage here put together showing how a new trend on TikTok. Remember how they were all sort of reading Osama bin Laden's letter to America, rationalizing the September 11th terror attacks, and they were all like reading from the same script, right? Saying, "Oh my God, this has blown my mind. Now I understand Osama bin Laden had a point." Well, they've written a new script for them all to read from. This one has people of TikTok reading the Quran and flirting with converting to Islam. And pay close attention to how they all say almost the exact same thing.
I started reading Quran.
I just started reading the Quran.
I've been reading the Quran, and I have a
Salam. Good morning.
And this is why so many people are starting to read the Quran.
So I ordered a Quran, and I just wanted to show you how heavy.
Okay, so I'm an ex-Christian reading the Quran.
Well, why is it, by the way, they all start with so? Is it just me? This is why I think it's all scripted. They're all saying the same thing, and even the so. Should we start the show that way from now on? When we do a social media video, when we do this show, we just start. Should I do that? So earlier today, Joe Biden made a fool of himself. So we've got some crazy video from the streets of New York. So Kamala Harris really likes Venn diagrams. I think we might do that every segment from now on. Let's see if it works. Seems to work for these people. Also, notice one other particular thing. Do you notice another consistency about all the people in this montage, or most of the people?
Today, I'm going to go through fighting war.
Started reading the Quran. This is the.
We're on the Quran, and we're on Joseph.
So I have started already tonight a little bit.
It is my first time reading the Quran. I thought I would share my thoughts on the first.
This sentence from the Quran just answered a question I.
Okay, guys. So I got the Quran.
So
I got like a version that I.
So I'm an atheist who recently got a copy of the Clear Quran to start reading. I
just started reading the Quran, and I am so excited about it.
Okay, so I didn't do that on purpose, I promise. Did you notice that it's almost entirely 100%, except for like one or two exceptions, women, young women. Boy, howdy, have they got some things to read in that Quran if they read it all. I hope they're reading the footnotes about how they're going to be treated. And most of them were women, except for this last one I'm sure you saw, which pretty sure that's a transgender individual. And I want to let you watch a little bit more of this person, because this probably confuses you. This whole idea is like, oh my gosh, what's with it? We've said it before, right? The whole LGBTQ for Hamas movement. Queers for Palestine. Thank you. It's like, dude, don't be queer in Palestine. It's not going to end well for you, right? So what's with this person who is clearly a transgender individual flirting with the idea of converting to Islam? Well, actually, I have actually a very good explanation for this, but let's watch the video first.
Just started reading the Quran and I am so excited about it. People thought when I first asked that I just wanted to read it out of curiosity, but I want to read it to study it. I started following somebody on social media that teaches the Quran and hosts a Quran book club for Muslims and non-Muslims, so I'm really excited to start going to that. She was describing the chapter of the bee and that just blew my mind. Like the way that she describes things, the way that the Quran describes things actually makes sense to me. And also, did you know that Allah is beyond gender? Did you know that actually scholars believe that there are two Qurans, the Quran of nature and the Quran, the actual book? And did you know that each chapter is named after a natural phenomenon? I don't know. This whole book is just blowing my mind and I am so excited. I got sticky notes so that I could mark out things that I was drawn to. And I'm not even through the first chapter and I already have a bunch of sticky notes. I'm definitely going to have to buy more tabs. I'm honestly having a whole revolution with myself where the way that I describe the universe and the things that I believe in are actually described in the Quran of believing in Allah. And I've never thought that I believed in God before. And now I'm really having a revolution of self of, I think I actually believe in God. If you've been curious, I really recommend it. There are a lot of people who are converting. There's a lot of people who are reading it. I'm not saying I'm going to convert. I'm not saying that I wouldn't. And I don't know. I know that this is exactly what I need right now. I just wanted to say thank you and just point out how excited I am.
Wow. There's a lot to unpack there, isn't there? I know what you're thinking. This transgender individual goes to the Middle East, converts to Islam, and they're going to have their head chopped off, right? What's this all about? Well, I did a little research for you, and you're going to be surprised. This is the website for the Human Rights Campaign. Oh, no, it's not. This is the website for the Human Rights Campaign, which is an activist group here in Washington, D.C., pushing LGBTQ issues. And they explore what it's like to be gay, bisexual, or transgender in an Islamic country. And get this. Transgender men and women are recognized and accepted in many Islamic cultures around the world. In fact, the idea of a man or woman identifying as a member of the opposite gender is more likely to be accepted than that of a man or woman expressing sexual desire for someone of their own gender. Read on. As early as 1988, gender reassignment surgery was declared acceptable under Islamic law by scholars at Egypt's Al-Azhar, the world's oldest Islamic university. In Iran in 1987, Ayatollah Khomeini, you'll remember him. He's the guy that took American hostages. Ayatollah Khomeini declared transgender surgical operations allowable. What is that all about? Well, in the incredibly enlightened and tolerant Islamic-run countries, apparently, it's better to surgically alter your body and identify as the opposite sex than which you were born than it is to be gay. In other words, there's a lot of transgender people in countries like Iran or Saudi Arabia or other Sharia law countries, because if they stayed gay, they'd be killed. But if they become transgender, then it's okay. I mean, they're shunned, they're treated poorly, but they're not murdered. So it actually makes a little bit more sense than you'd expect. This also brings up a very interesting story highlighted in City Journal, and it comes out of New England, where the Fenway Community Health Center in Boston, one of the largest providers of transgender medicine in New England, is being sued by a gay man who was convinced by the doctors there to take a chemical altering, body altering, hormone altering transgender drugs. This was a gay man who was struggling with his sexual identity and wasn't quite sure about all of these feelings that he was having and same-sex attraction. And he was convinced by the doctors there that what was really going on was that he was a woman. In the lawsuit, he refers to this as gay conversion practices and a violation of his civil rights. In other words, right now, there's a huge movement right now for people who are feeling same-sex attraction, whether they're a gay man or a lesbian woman, to actually convince them what they're really feeling is gender dysphoria. And the real issue here is not that you're a gay man or a lesbian woman. The real issue is that God put you in the wrong body. So let's prescribe drugs and hormones and suggest that you get forever permanent surgical alteration to your body, sexual genital mutilation of perfectly healthy organs, lopped off or completely altered, so that you could identify as the opposite sex than what you were born, because God forbid you be a gay man or a lesbian woman. And by the way, this is what goes as enlightened progressive thought today in America. We're seeing some pretty interesting changes in the way we're supposed to address people who are gay and lesbian. And apparently we're jumping right on board with Sharia law countries like Iran. All right, let's move on to another topic, although not really another topic. This comes out of, is this Nevada, this story? I think it came from, well, take a look.
Woman who is helping decide sex education curriculum and more in the Godly ISD is now removed from multiple positions within the school district because she's a convicted prostitute.
A Fox 4 investigation reveals she's also advertising herself online as an escort. Fox 4's David Santendry has more.
Sorry, this is Texas. And just that went by real fast. This whole story is going to come at you real fast. But this is a prostitute who was involved in creating the sexual education curriculum for the local public schools. Oh, but there's more.
The discovery of a convicted prostitute being on multiple school committees and volunteer groups raises concern about background checks within Godly ISD and districts throughout the state of Texas.
But we had no idea what was going on in her personal life. She was always very friendly and personable.
A convicted prostitute actively advertising as an escort was serving on a council that recommends appropriate grade levels and methods for human sexuality instruction within Godly ISD.
And I don't see any community wanting that to be the standard for their school district.
Well, hold on a minute there. By the way, the irony is not lost on me that the district is called Godly, but we'll set that aside for a moment. Listen, if you're looking for expertise on, say, science curriculum, maybe you get a chemist or somebody who works at NASA to give you advice. You're looking for expertise in your history curriculum, then you get a scholar and a professional historian, maybe a biographer to give you advice. You're looking for expertise in the sex curriculum? Well, find a prostitute. I mean, she's a professional, for God's sake. Who better to advise? If they knew about it, I get you not. I bet you somebody in the school system actually made this argument.
School Health Advisory Councils, or SHACs, are required by Texas law. SHACs recommend to school boards a wide range of health education protocols for students, including appropriate grade levels and curriculum for instruction regarding sex trafficking.
And I would not want children to be subject to those type of people.
Kayla Lane is a Godly ISD board trustee. Lane was made aware of a now former SHAC member's history of prostitution by Mary Lowe, a member of the nonprofit Families Engaged for Effective Education.
And we can do better, and we must do better.
And that's the other thing we need to talk about is the health fair.
Ashley Ketcherside is shown in a Godly ISD YouTube video at the SHAC Council's first meeting of the school year in October. She's listed as a committee member in meeting minutes. Members need to be appointed by the school board to serve, according to a district spokesperson who says Ketcherside's family entered the district this year. Ketcherside was also selected by Superintendent Rich Deere to the Long Range Facility Planning Committee. She was a volunteer on the Family and Community Engagement Committee, PTO, and Godly Athletic Booster Club. Ketcherside also leads a local cheerleading group, according to Godly ISD.
And so I believe that parents need to know.
Lowe says some parents became suspicious of Ketcherside because she claimed to own multiple businesses, but information about those businesses was unknown.
Some parents took it to investigate and came up with this.
A LexisNexis public record search reveals one of her email addresses matches the same email address on escort sites for a Lola Bree.
I Googled her email address, and that's how I was able to find the escort services.
Lola Bree's images are found on public websites. Some images are too risque to use in our report. Tarrant County court documents obtained by Fox 4 reveal Ashley Ketcherside, maiden name Ashley Villalobos, was found guilty of prostitution in 2012 and 2016. An affidavit claims she is also known as Lola Bree. One escort site says Lola Bree was active last month. Lola Bree has client reviews this year and reviews dating back a decade. To be clear, escort sites are legal in Texas. Escorts charge for their companionship and time. However, if sex is exchanged for money, it's prostitution.
We don't know what kind of clients she comes into contact with or who she works for.
In 2016, regarding a separate matter, a judge signed an injunction not allowing specific children to visit any place of Ashley Villalobos' residence because she was a known prostitute.
All right, so let's unpack this. Were you keeping score on all of this? By the way, I think it's Brea, Lola Brea, right? Not Lola Bree. I think it's Brea. It's a city in California. It's a Spanish word, Lola Brea. All right, so Lola Brea is the alias name for this prostitute who had a judgment against her to keep her away from children, as well as 2 convictions for prostitution. And then she found her way onto an advisory council for sex education curriculum for the public school system. Sound good to you? Can I just make one more suggestion to all of you who are out there watching this? Could you please investigate running for school board in your local town? Because we've sort of let things go a bit. We need to get the grown-ups back in the room, please. Speaking of getting grown-ups back in the room, Donald Trump just landed an unlikely endorsement. This man right here is the founder and president of Black Lives Matter in Rhode Island.
You, BLM leader, and you're now endorsing Donald Trump, saying he's the best candidate we have. Why do you think he is the best candidate that we have?
Because everybody else sucks.
So is he just the best of a bad group? I mean, is he not that great either, but he's just like better than the rest?
Well, I like Trump, personally. And I think right now who we have sitting in the Oval Office is just a deep disappointment. I deeply have disdain for him, and I really dislike the vice president as well.
What is it that why do you not like them versus like Donald Trump? I would imagine you're alone in this. Do you feel alone in this viewpoint in the world that you're in, being in the BLM movement?
No, I feel like the tide is starting to turn. I feel like a lot of Black people are starting to pivot off of that Democratic plantation for so long. We've been slaves to that party. Actually, we've been mental slaves, afraid to get off of that plantation because, we've been used and abused for so long at that party. They don't value our vote. Their policies are basically racist policies. And I believe it's a racist party that strikes at the heart of the Black family and the nuclear family in general. And I believe Donald Trump he's the opposite. He's going to tell you how it is. He's going to give it to you straight. He's not going to, be a hypocrite and stab you in the back like the Democratic Party loves to do.
So his name is Mark Fisher, and yes, he is the founder and president of the Rhode Island chapter of Black Lives Matter, and he made a lot of sense there on a couple of levels. That last point he made about how the Democratic Party and their policies have been an assault on the nuclear family, especially the Black nuclear family unit. He's right, but he should also be informed that that's what Black Lives Matter stands for as well. They're a Marxist organization, and the original language on their website actually said that they wanted to blow apart the concept of the nuclear family in Western civilization. After much criticism, they removed that from the website, but they never said that they don't still stand for it. So he might want to look into that. But he's right. The tide is turning, and no, he doesn't stand alone. The latest polls show, especially amongst African-American men, Donald Trump continues to gain ground on Joe Biden. In fact, partly it's because the economy was so much better and the employment situation was so much better, but also look at the crime situation in every single major American city, from Washington, D.C. to Baltimore to Detroit to Cleveland to New York to Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, and I can keep going. The violent crime statistics are through the roof, and all of those cities are dominated by Joe Biden's party, the Democrats. As Donald Trump said in 2016 at a speech just outside of Detroit to a predominantly African-American audience, you've been voting for this party for years, and what are you getting out of it? I mean, seriously, look at your lives, look at your cities. Why don't you give me a shot? You couldn't do any worse. And in fact, he proved in 4 years that he did quite a bit better. Let me tell you something. If Joe Biden and the Democrats lose another 20 to 30% of the black vote like they did in the last presidential election to Donald Trump, it's over. It's absolutely over. Did I mention Oakland in that litany of cities that I just laid out? Because Oakland's one of them too. And things are pretty bad there. In fact, in Oakland, California, the city council was proposing language that would call for an immediate ceasefire in the Middle East. Because, you may not know this, but most international bodies, especially governments of countries in the Middle East and terror leaders in the Middle East, they always take their cues from the Oakland City Council. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the government of Saudi Arabia, the government of Israel, the government of Jordan, trying to figure out their national security policies, their diplomacy efforts, even their basic taxation and economic policies. They always stop to themselves and say, hold on, before we make a decision, let's hear from the Oakland, California City Council. Before the bill was voted on, though, at Oakland City Council, one brave member inserted a line that condemned Hamas. And then all hell broke loose.
There's not been beheadings of babies and rapings. Israel murdered their own people on October 7th.
Calling Hamas a terrorist organization is ridiculous, racist, and plays into genocidal propaganda that is flooding our media and that we should be doing everything possible to combat.
I support the right of Palestinians to resist occupation, including through Hamas, the armed wing of the unified Palestinian resistance. As an Arab, asking with this context to condemn Hamas is very anti-Arab racist.
The notion that this was a massacre of Jews is a fabricated narrative. Many of those killed on October 7th,
Thank you, ma'am. Your time is up.
including children, were killed by the IDF. An amendment condemning Hamas is bald propaganda meant to...
Thank you. Your time is up.
To hear them complain about Hamas violence is like listening to a wife beater complain when his wife finally stands up and fights back.
Question. Did anyone else notice that those who oppose this resolution are old white supremacists?
There's been a lot of atrocity propaganda ranging from claims of beheaded babies to mass rape.
Hamas is not a terrorist organization just because the U.S. and Israel deems it so. Hamas is a resistance organization that is fighting for the liberation of Palestinian people and their land.
Yeah, a couple of things here. First of all, did you notice something? A lot of these people are wearing, what's that called? Here, this guy here. That's a keffiyeh, right? Isn't that what they call it? A keffiyeh? That's the traditional Palestinian scarf. They wear it on their heads. They cover their face with it so that they don't reveal their identity. Why is that not cultural appropriation? This dude ain't Palestinian. Why is he wearing that? Why were those women wearing that? Those white women and black women wearing this? That's specific Palestinian Arab garb. I mean, I'm not allowed to wear a sombrero when I'm celebrating Cinco de Mayo, but they can wear a keffiyeh. All right, setting that aside for a minute, though. You heard the vast majority of those people not just defending and protecting and promoting Hamas and the events of October 7th. When they weren't doing that, the other ones were denying that October 7th actually happened. You know, it took years, decades for people to start denying the Holocaust, right? If you remember right, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, before he became president, when they liberated the death camps in Auschwitz and Poland and Germany, he specifically wanted film crews to record what they found there because he was afraid that in the future, anti-Semites and Jew haters would deny that it ever happened. And he wanted to make sure that people saw that it did happen. We just lost our camera. Did we lose our sound too? No. All right, we're good. Everything's fine. Eisenhower specifically wanted to make sure he recorded it because he knew that anti-Semites would deny the Holocaust. You know, there are some brain-dead numbskulls, evil individuals who deny the Holocaust today, but it's been 75 years. These people couldn't wait 7 weeks before they denied the events of October 7th. It's happening right before our very eyes. They're claiming that the IDF are the ones who did it. It was all a plot to make Hamas look bad. Are you kidding me? Does it get any more bigoted than that? Oh, and speaking of bigotry, as a conservative Republican in the United States of America, I've endured years, over a decade, in fact, of being told that I'm a racist because I use dog whistle language, right? Dog whistle. You hear it all the time. Well, that's a dog whistle to racist, what you're saying. You know, dog whistles, by definition, are inaudible. You can't hear them. They're silent. Apparently, only the racist can hear what you're really saying. Just like only dogs can hear the silent whistle. So we've been told we're bigoted, racist anti-Semites because of the invisible, silent things that we say. And yet these people, they're not using dog whistles, baby. They're standing on the top of the roof blowing a very loud trumpet, showing their anti-Semitic bigotry. But what do people in the media and the progressive left mainstream do with them? Well, I'll show you an example of what they do. Because here on Piers Morgan's show in England, we had a guest do exactly the same thing.
Categorize what happened on October the 7th as resistance.
I would categorize it as resistance, and it's not
though,
my
is it? It's just terrorism.
categorization where that's coming
It's
from.
just terrorism.
Is there any categorization of Palestinian resistance, armed resistance, that you wouldn't categorize as terrorism?
I think when several thousand people storm,
Israel wouldn't categorize?
I think when several thousand people storm over a border. Well, hang on, let me just respond. I think when several thousand people storm over a border and attack peace-loving people in kibbutzes and butcher them to death, raking people's heads off, killing babies, incinerating
Many of those people were killed by Israel itself.
But that is,
Israel
Nadine,
actually,
we have to
came
agree
out that Israel incinerated a 12-year-old.
Fine, we have to agree, though,
Israeli girl.
before we get
Israeli
to
tanks that incinerated
before we
them.
get to Israel's response, you must accept that what happened that day was an act of terrorism, surely.
I don't live in a concentration camp, and neither do you, and neither does Emily. I haven't lived under the brutal conditions that the people of Gaza have had to endure for the better part of the last 2 decades. It's not up to me to tell people who are breaking free from a concentration camp how exactly they should do that.
All right,
and
Emily.
like I said, when Palestinians tried to do that
This is the
peacefully in
concentration
2018,
camp
they
that
were
she's
shot
referring
at.
to.
Right,
This
let
is
Emily
Gaza.
respond.
This is a very beautiful concentration camp that is Gaza, and it's a damn shame that Hamas terrorists are invading this very beautiful looking concentration camp.
Yeah, maybe when you're debating an Israeli citizen living in Israel, a country that was carved out as a response to the concentration camps of World War II, like Auschwitz, where 6 million innocents were slaughtered by the Nazis, maybe you shouldn't use the term concentration camp, especially, listen, if there was any pain or suffering endured by Palestinian people in Gaza, it's the fault of Hamas and the Gazan government, because Israel has had nothing to say about what goes on in Gaza for, 15 years now? Yeah, maybe the word concentration camp isn't the most judicious thing. But you heard her there. It was the IDF that did the murders there on October 7th, and she refuses to call it terrorist.
If only the Jews were that lucky to have such a beautiful concentration camp. Nardine, listen. Pierce, let's cut to the chase.
I can't
Stop
see
asking
photos
her to
of what's
condemn
being
October 7th.
shared, so
Stop
this
asking her to
is,
condemn
not-
October
this is not
7th when
fair.
she is borderline a terrorist herself. She herself incites violence. She herself protests and always incites violence and vandalism, even though vandalism is not protected by our First Amendment. So how do you expect her to condemn terrorism when she has openly said that it is an act of resistance and she continues to justify
Meanwhile,
it?
you're the
And
one
I
on
also
national
want to say,
TV
Nardine,
defending the
I'm
murder
not
of
done
8,000
speaking.
Palestinian
I'm not done
children.
speaking. I was
I don't
about to
care
say
about
it
you
is a
speaking.
damn
I'm not here
shame.
to debate you.
And I don't care about you either. And I'm here to say, I'm just going to keep speaking.
Clearly
every
you care
single
about me.
life
You're
that is
tagging me
lost by
speaking
the
about
Don't talk over
Palestinians,
each
all
other,
the
please.
time.
every single life that is taken on either side is abhorrent. It is atrocious, and I wish it would stop. Israel cannot stop until Hamas is defeated. Israel is the only military in the world that will knock on doors, send out pamphlets, send out alarms on roofs, and warn civilians to leave. And Hamas will rather barricade their own civilians.
But Emily,
the psychological warfare.
Did you catch that? By going out of your way to send pamphlets down to warn innocent civilians in Gaza to get out of the way because an attack is about to come, that's now psychological warfare. You know what? She's right. They should just plow ahead and not give them any advance warning. Seriously, this is heads I win, tails you lose. The only thing that Israel can do to make people like this satisfied is if Israel ceases to exist. Just roll up the tent and go away. But even then, they won't be happy because they actually just hate Jews. They want Jews killed. All right, let's shift to another country. All right, let's go to self-loathing Ireland, where we have a phenomenal montage of elected officials in Ireland who tend to hate the Irish people.
While it's true that the Irish have known a fair share of oppression, the reality is during that oppression, we still maintained our invisibility cloak of white privilege.
And we often hear about white privilege, and it hadn't really occurred to me that I had white privilege as well. But now, listening to you, I understand that I do have a privilege.
I think we shouldn't forget that our parliament still looks very male, very stale and pale.
Of course, you can say that you're a middle-class white man. So you view the law completely different to somebody who is a traveller, to somebody who is uneducated, to somebody who's maybe a member of the Roma community. So it is very, very different. You know that the law doesn't treat you the same. It does.
I just want to pause there for a moment. Did she just say, you're a white man, you don't know what it's like to be uneducated? Does that mean the people who aren't white are uneducated? I mean, do you notice the underlying racism embedded into all of these women? And it's almost entirely women who are spending their time in the Irish Parliament hating white people, most specifically white men. By the way, not for nothing, I would love for these Irish people to look up how Irish people were treated here in America when they first immigrated, because it's not all parades and roses. I assure you, there was no white privilege for the Irish immigrants that came to America back in the 19th century. In fact, I don't think they even considered us white here in this country.
Doesn't treat you the same.
You, as a white privileged man, how does my debt impact your life?
I think it's worth putting on the record of this House that concept of white privilege and how that can be normatized in our own lives. And, you know, we as we develop as a society and a more racially integrated society, I think need to become more and more conscious of that within our own politics and the advantage that has brought, but the corollary being that your whiteness is itself an advantage, and to really understand that.
I often observe young people as they walk together. One of their party or two of their party will be from, you know, their background maybe from a different country, and they are, you know, celebrating that and they're engaged in that much more so in the very dull, white, pasty Ireland that I grew up in. I think what we need to do in our own political system is to call out the hypocrisy of standing in a parliament like this, full of white people, and saying as racism is something that other people do, because it's what politicians here in Ireland do. Because the Ireland that I grew up in was made for people just like me. It was made for white, middle-class, able-bodied, heterosexual men. It was made for us. We've always run this place.
You know, I had a question for these white, able-bodied, heterosexual men who stand up in the Irish Parliament and decry the fact that their society and their structure has been created and promulgated just to support white, able-bodied, heterosexual men. Resign. Step down. Why are you taking that seat in Parliament away from a non-white, gender-fluid, disabled, thank you, fat, can't say fat. Now you got me in trouble. That's body shaming. That was Kevin McMahon, by the way. There's nothing better than a white, able-bodied, heterosexual man standing up there in a position of power that he has because he hasn't stepped aside and allowed somebody who isn't a white, heterosexual, able-bodied man to run for office. It's like Joe Biden, the whitest man in America, deciding that he's going to be president. Kamala Harris, I'll let you sit on the side and be my vice president because I'm just that open-minded. Yeah, Gavin Newsom, the second whitest man in America, now wants to be president because he's a champion of black women. I tell you what, if you really want to help black women, why don't you get out of office, resign, step down, let somebody else be in charge? Hypocrites. Earlier today on CNN, a woman who represents the UN body on women's rights was asked a very specific question. Given what we saw happen, the atrocities that happened to women on the October 7th attacks at the hands of Hamas, why won't the UN condemn Hamas? It's a pretty simple question. Wait till you hear the convoluted answer.
Reason, though, Sarah, that you can't specifically call out Hamas and the mounting evidence now over 7 weeks that Israeli investigators have collected, that we've shown our viewers about the atrocities they committed specifically on October 7th, because I think that's the crux of the issue here. It's not just condemning sexual violence against women and in any war in general. It's specifically what occurred on October 7th, perpetrated by Hamas.
Indeed. UN Women always supports impartial, independent investigations into any serious allegations of gender-based or sexual violence. And within the UN family, these investigations are led by the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights. And just to provide a little bit of context in terms of UN Women's role, UN Women specifically provides and has extensive knowledge on gender-based violence and provides and supports investigations as we do with all UN investigations. And so consequently, in this context and within the UN system, it is the Independent International Commission of Inquiry, which for us has the mandate to investigate all alleged violations.
Wow. Did you follow that? The first part of her answer, in terms of why can't you condemn Hamas, considering what we saw they did, what the videos that we've seen, and the firsthand accounts of the rape and mutilation and destruction, specifically toward women on October 7th. The first part of the answer is, well, that's the Jews telling you that, and we can't really trust the Jews. We've got to have our own independent investigation because, you know, that's just propaganda coming from them. I would have loved the CNN anchor to say, no, we've seen the video. In fact, we've seen the video because the rapists and murderers and kidnappers from Hamas actually shot the video themselves. They wanted you to see it. They were proud of what they did. Wow, we need to have our own independent investigation. We don't want to go out on a limb there. And by the way, the body that will conduct that investigation, the Department of Human Rights at the UN, it's populated and overwhelmingly run by other Arab-run nations, Arab-dominated nations, Muslim-dominated nations in the Middle East, like Iran. Iran sits on that commission. So I'm sure we'll get a fair and impartial investigation into what happened on October 7th. The second part of the answer, by the way, was nothing but bureaucratic, diplomatic, international relations gobbledygook that literally means nothing. And it's just another reason why the UN has completely jumped the shark. There's no reason for this body at all. What's the point of having a United Nations when the United Nations Committee specifically for protecting women around the world can't bring themselves 8 weeks after the October 7th terror attacks to condemn Hamas specifically for what they did to the women there? Well, if you can't do that, then you don't have a right to exist anymore. And by the way, our tax dollars here in America, we're keeping that place alive. That's all I got time for today. I can't. I'm just angry. Now I'm angry. Now I'm in a bad mood. I should have left with something fun. Got anything fun? We got nothing fun. We do have this, though, my email address. Send me some emails so I can do a show for the holidays responding to your emails and your comments. And if you see something fun on the internet that you want me to comment on, go ahead and email it there. LarryOC@townhall.com. Or you can leave a comment here, wherever you're watching us, Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or X or wherever. Just put my name in capital letters, Larry, so it's easy to find. All right. Thanks a bunch. We'll be back tomorrow. My name's Larry O'Connor. Call me Larry. We'll see you next time.